of course, was really trying to demonstrate vim and vigor.
Oh, yeah.
Thus some of the yelling to show he's got the energy and the intellectual competency to run again in 2024.
Well, he started off, too, with a joke that went off script in reference to Justice Roberts.
By the way, Chief Justice, I may need a court order. She gets to go to the game tomorrow, next week. I have to stay home. Got to work something out here.
Okay. So back to the vim and vigor thing. This is why you had like moments like this one.
Ban assault weapons now.
Yeah, moral clarity.
But in the past 2 years, democracies have become stronger, not weaker. Autocracy has grown weaker, not stronger. Name me a world leader who changed places with Xi Jinping. Name me one. Name me one.
Why?
And he practiced that?
He's got President Xi and the Chi-Coms on the run, he does, you see. Strong America, vibrant America, vital America. POTUS, who's screaming at the Chinese Communist president. How dare you, sir? Name you one? Okay, I don't know. I can just spin the wheel at the Chinese Communist Politburo. I'm sure anybody would love to backfill him. Plus, I don't know, any number of American Fortune 500 CEOs, professors, members of the D.C. press corps. A lot of people would be happy to lord over a totalitarian state, I'm sure. And also did not really make any noticeable gaffes. In fact, he pulled up on one gaffe that was coming, which shows, cognizance. When he referred to the Ukrainian ambassador to the U.S. who was in the audience.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't dare try to pronounce her name, Oksana Markarova, because that would have been a disaster. He just, you up there, stand up, let people see you. Yeah. Sarah Sanders, in her response, the newly minted governor of Arkansas, drew an interesting contrast, thinking about the 2024 race for president, a contrast between her and Biden. I don't think it's because she has aspirations to run for president, but I think she's in part reading the tea leaves and trying to sort of represent the Republican Party as something bigger and perhaps even different than her former boss, President Trump.
President Biden and I don't have a lot in common. I'm for freedom. He's for government control. At 40, I'm the youngest governor in the country. And at 80, he's the oldest president in American history. I'm the first woman to lead my state, and he's the first man to surrender his presidency to a woke mob that can't even tell you what a woman is.
For more on this, please be joined by Andy Kroll, now at ProPublica, used to be at Rolling Stone. He's also the author of A Death on W Street, The Murder of Seth Rich and the Age of Conspiracy. Andy, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
It's great to be back.
So, earlier this week, the news was out that the Democrats have moved South Carolina ahead of Iowa. That's clearly a play for President Trump, and his buddy Jim Clyburn put South Carolina first, get some momentum out of the box if he would choose to run again. I mean, are the Democrats really, for all the talk about are the Republicans really going to do this with Trump, are the Democrats really going to do this with Biden?
All indications right now are it's President Biden and no one else. You're not even hearing the usual rumblings or whispers behind the scenes of another Bernie Sanders run or some governor or young congressperson who throws their hat in just to keep it from being a one-horse race. You're not even hearing those things now, while at the same time, even Democrats in polls say President Biden is too old to do another 4 years, that they think the president shouldn't be going on his 90s and be in the White House. And it's a weird place that Democrats find themselves in, sort of lashed to a president that they don't think should be there anymore, but really without any alternatives, or at least anyone willing to step up and challenge that president.
So the scuttlebutt about a Newsom or a Pritzker or maybe a Jared Polis in Colorado, that just remains fantasy electoral politics at this point. I mean, there's nobody saying, look, this is him, presenting a strong front because he doesn't want to be, rendered completely irrelevant the last 2 years of his term. But you're saying that's not even a discussion point. It's all hands on deck for Joe Biden. Really?
It's a discussion point in the polling that shows Democrats want someone else to run. They at least want someone else, younger, fresh face, new vision, something from the old political establishment, something different from that. Yes, there is that conversation. Absolutely, that conversation is raging, not just in the Beltway, but elsewhere. I mean, of those three Democrats you just mentioned, Newsom has sent every signal that he does not want to give up the California governor's seat. He does not want to get in this race. Pritzker, your favorite,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely. I've heard chatter, and he has the obviously the financial means to self-fund a run and to get around the Democratic establishment, the DNC, the party structure, etc. And Polis is an interesting one as well because he's always been a kind of iconoclastic Democrat, never fit neatly into the party, very much broke from his party in terms of COVID policies, opening the state up faster, dealing with public schools much differently than the teachers' unions and others would have wanted. But not hearing much out of Colorado, at least at this point either. It's really just Pritzker, and even those are faint echoes at this point from everything I've heard from sources in the party, people involved in the DNC. You're just not hearing that much now in a way that you think you might at this point, looking toward 2024.
But, I mean, what about Pete Buttigieg? Because, I mean, think about it. Biden's going to be, 86 years old? He doesn't have the stamina and the wherewithal to make it another term, I don't think, personally, and I think most Americans agree.
But just look at the public polls. Most Americans do agree. A lot of Democrats agree, and they're Joe Biden's party.
A majority of them,
Buttigieg
actually.
Yeah, a majority of them. So this is not a radical or controversial notion. Pete Buttigieg is young. He, by going into the Biden administration, I think has signaled that he is not now going to pull out of it and challenge his own president, barring some kind of break between the two men. He can run for president in 4 years, 8 years, 12 years. If we're saying presidents can run until they're in their mid-80s, we are with Buttigieg for the rest of my lifetime. So yeah. I think he can wait. He has the patience. But if it's going to be anyone, it's probably going to be one of these governors who has their own financial war chest to finance their own run and not depend on the Democratic establishment.
So, and again, the scuttlebutt on the other side, there's nothing that concerns them about House Republican committee investigations into Biden Inc., into the FBI, into the FBI/Biden Inc.'s collaboration with big tech. None of those things concerns them about in terms of derailing another Biden run.
Not from what I've heard so far, and I talk to a lot of these people on a daily or weekly basis, and as well as the Republicans on the Hill who are leading and manning these investigations. What I've heard so far is essentially this is what the minority party does. Every time they get the House, they get subpoena power, they take over the House Oversight Committee and get the investigative authority there. This is just like 2015, 2016, and Benghazi all over again. There is a dismissiveness that what the House Republicans can do now will have any bearing on Biden. I don't know if that's credible or not. I mean, it depends on what the House Republicans turn up, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's the Benghazi and give it the Dick Durbin back of the hand. Well, the Benghazi investigation didn't help Hillary Clinton in 2016. It may not have been determinative, but it certainly weakened her, as did all of the coverage of the Clinton Foundation. And we have something similar to that with these Biden, in quotation marks, think tanks at UPenn and Delaware, and money coming from there in addition to the the business dealings of the family itself. So but it seems a bit cavalier to me, given even recent history.
I think the Democrats are used to this kind of, partisan investigative fighting. I mean, obviously, they do it plenty well on the offensive side, as you saw from 4 years of the Trump administration, and they certainly feel like they have it pretty well dealt with, or at least they have prepared for it now that they are in the minority in the House. You see a huge mobilization on the Dem side in D.C., with people like David Brock and others mobilizing, starting their own pro-Biden groups to defend the president, to defend Hunter Biden, and so on. So I think they're kind of getting in their trenches for 2 years, but that does not seem to have shaken any of the party establishment in a way to suggest that, well, wait a minute, Biden is vulnerable. Biden maybe shouldn't be the party frontrunner. Maybe we should look to one of these governors, should look to someone in the cabinet or whomever. That just doesn't seem to be the case right now. Biden's State of the Union last night is a testament to that. That was a pretty clear pre-election launch speech in an unofficial way.
Right. He
is running, and he thinks and believes, and everything indicates that he is the Democratic Party's horse right now.
What did you think about Sarah Sanders' response in that clip we played, where she mentioned this a couple of times in her 14-minute speech? New Republicans are presenting a new generation of Republican leadership, that doesn't really hold up in terms of a description. If Trump is the nominee, not saying he is, this is going to be a crowded field again, it would seem. But is there more movement afoot than meets the eye to rally behind DeSantis or to rally behind anyone not Trump?
Without a doubt. I mean, that line from Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Governor Huckabee Sanders now, stuck out to me for a couple of reasons. One, clear contrast with the president who just delivered the State of the Union address, both in energy and youth, presentation, generation. I mean, you can't mistake that. That was such a break, seeing her after President Biden, and it just made me think, okay, well, if the Republicans nominate someone of her generation, of that age, that will be pretty dark on the presidential debate stage, on the campaign trail. And yeah, it's absolutely a message from Governor Huckabee Sanders, who, shall we remember, was the press secretary for then President Trump, calling for, or at least planting in people's minds, the idea of a need for a new generation, someone like a Governor DeSantis, Senator Josh Hawley. I mean, you can pick from a whole bunch of Republicans who are of that same age and ilk. And we see it even earlier this week. There was some news coverage that the Koch network, this sort of federation of nonprofit groups and big donors, put out a memo saying it's time to turn the page. It's time to move on. They did not reference former President Trump specifically, but the implication was obvious enough. You're hearing this more and more from different parts of the conservative movement, different parts of the Republican Party, that it is time for someone new, younger face. The torchbearer for the party needs to be from that new generation, especially if that person is running against a mid-'80s Joe Biden.
And what does Trump have operational right now in terms of a campaign? I mean, obviously, every pronouncement he makes is going to get media coverage, so he doesn't need to be terribly robust, particularly with essentially a clear field at this point, and probably for at least for a couple of months before the field more fully forms. So what kind of operation does he have set up? Is he going to be able to get most of the band back together, such as that band is?
It doesn't look like it, to be honest. He's, former President Trump is pretty well ensconced down in Florida. He has, obviously, his kids down there. He has, a handful of, more than a handful, probably a dozen of the well-known folks from his administration who are tied to some kind of America First branded group. Stephen Miller is doing his thing in some corners. Kash Patel is doing his thing. Mark Meadows is floating around in all of this. You have a group of loyalists to the former president, who I think are still assisting him, helping him, or carrying on the America First mission in some capacity. But I don't know if that stays the same if and when, say, a Ron DeSantis gets in the race, or Nikki Haley, who's expected to get in, in a week or two here, or anyone else who might emerge from the Republican Party. So it does not feel like a former president's re-election campaign or campaign to get elected again in this case. That may just be because it's so early in the 2023-2024 election cycle, or it may be that conservative activists, operatives, donors especially, you hear, are looking to someone new. They are looking to turn the page. So I don't think this Trump campaign is going to look like the 2021. Maybe it looks a little bit like the 2016 one was, which was a bit of a pirate ship until he started winning primaries and caucuses, and then it became much more of an operation.
He is Andy Kroll, ProPublica reporter, author of A Death on W Street, The Murder of Seth Rich and the Age of Conspiracy. Andy, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you. And he